The meeting to order for Committee Safety, March the 9th. And does anybody have anything to add to the agenda? Seeing none, a motion on the minutes. Moved, seconded. All those in favor, contrary carried. Our next meeting date will be April 13th in this very room or wherever we are. And the first item on the agenda is the business licenses quarterly report for the 2020 year in review. Carly Williams. Carly, there you are. Your mic's live.
Hello.
You're looking great.
Oh, thank you.
Anything to add to the wonderful report or anything to highlight?
Nothing to add. Happy to answer your questions.
All right. Anything from committee? Seeing none. Carol? Yes. Sorry, I got you.
Thank you. Yes, thanks for the report. As always, very efficient. I had a couple of small questions. On CS12, it states that the revenues for 2016 were significantly lower than they were in consecutive years afterwards. Is that because we didn't have staff in that position?
Through the chair to Councillor Day, that is the reason we had a big changeover in 2016. And it took us a while to get staff on board to get out and deal with enforcement matters.
Excellent. And the second question I had, thank you, that's what I figured it had to be. In the third paragraph from the bottom, it says that the number of short-term rental operations has decreased dramatically due to travel restrictions in place. So I'm assuming that means that people haven't redone their permits, that haven't paid for 2021 or 2020?
Yeah, through the chair to Councillor Day, the permitting program approved by council, came into effect mere months before the pandemic and the shutdown of travel. So the program hasn't really had the start that had anticipated.
Okay. The reason I ask is because if someone gives up their license, someone else could snap it up, couldn't they?
Oh, through the chair to Councillor Day, I believe you're referring to bed and breakfast operations. Sorry.
Yeah.
Bed and breakfast operations have continued. They have maintained their license. You are correct that if someone gives it up, they can snap it up. The paragraph on this page, was referring to a licensing program for short-term boarding and lodging. So the licensing program for boarding and lodging, not bed and breakfast.
Oh, okay, because it says the number of short-term rental operations has decreased dramatically.
Through Chair to Council Day, that's right. Overall, short-term rental refers to all the different types of short-term rentals.
Oh.
What was new for the City of Richmond was licensing program for boarding and lodging. And that was the thing that came into effect, I could say, a month or two, barely, before the pandemic happened. We have seen that the bed and breakfast licenses, for the most part, they've maintained their licenses.
Okay, the way I read this, and maybe that could be changed before it goes to council, it doesn't sound that way. But what you've done is you've lumped everything together, correct?
Not sure. This section was intended a licensing program for short-term boarding and lodging. This section talks about boarding and lodging, not all of short-term rentals.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, good. I just wanted to be clear on that because I'm sure there would be people that would be very disappointed if they got a short-term license and then they didn't pay it because, they weren't getting any guests and someone else, parachuted in and took that license away from them because there's only so many allowed in each area. So I just wanted to be clear on that. So thank you for the information.
Okay. Anybody else for any questions on this report? All right, seeing none, a motion to receive for information. Moved, seconded. All those in favor, contrary carried. Thank you. All right, the next one is the property use and monthly activity report on CS14. Anything to add there, Carly?
Nothing to add.
Okay, questions? Michael?
Thank you. Through the chair to staff, just a question if there could be a slight elaboration from page CS16 related to the soils. So there were 3 houses and then a 4th one mentioned after that, also on Blundell Road. I'm just curious if you could elaborate on what is the non-compliance factor. So many of these houses I pass on a regular basis, and the two on Blundell are fully built homes. I'm not sure if people are living in them yet. But what is the common thread that their non-compliance is considered? And then if you could also speak to the Westminster Highway one, which is directly across the street from Richmond Nature Park, and to have a non-compliance there, that probably also has some impact on the environmental sensitivity of that whole region. And I'm familiar with that property. My grandmother used to be a care person for the old couple that used to live there like 20 years ago. And then the Cambie Road one, I'm also a little bit confused by that one, because it's when I look for the address, it's kind of in the middle of nowhere. So anyhow, if staff could comment on those four. Thanks.
Yeah, through the chair to Councillor Wolf, I actually don't have the details on each of those files. What I can say, though, is the three bulleted addresses, Westminster Highway, the first Blundell, and Cambie, those were found to be in non-compliance and resolved within the same month, which is great. And what that tells me is it's very likely it was something minor. Lots of times our soil bylaw officer will catch people bringing something in and will offer at first to clarify the rules. And if he catches them early enough, it's as simple as, and I have noted it here for council, we caught something happening which ought not to be allowed. But within that same month, these people were able to resolve it and come into compliance. So that is great news, both for catching it early and for getting voluntary compliance, because we didn't have to go to fines or court or anything like that. In many cases, there's issues with farm home plates, so people will spread soil beyond their farm home plate. Sometimes it's as simple as telling them to bring it back. Other times, say, like stopping the trucks is the issue. In the case of the one at 13220 Blundell Road, that was one previously found in non-compliance and took some time to come into compliance. And so the intent of this section is to highlight for council, because I often receive questions about properties we're dealing with. So these are the properties where we found problems and resolved it, and then Blundell is where there was a previous problem and it was resolved this month. So starting to sort of book all of these properties so we know what status they're in.
Great, thank you. If I could follow up through the chair staff on that one, and then just one other short item. So I'm familiar with some of the properties I mentioned, and my concern, what I see is the building footprint, like you mentioned, the floor house plate, the edge of it, the sand pile, slopes down and goes right into the neighboring property. And I'm not sure if the issue is what we're allowing at building approvals, if we're allowing buildings to go so close to the property line, and then they're required to have raised elevation to a certain grade, and if that's a common factor that you're seeing this around, or would that not trigger the soils bylaw in this case? Are you able to comment on that?
Through the chair to council, well, part of placing soil, and even if it's sand for preload, is not impacting neighboring properties. So they must control it so that it doesn't impact neighboring properties. So it cannot slough onto neighboring properties or drain water onto neighboring properties. If we were aware of that, we would be asking them to pull it back and control it. So if the grade is significant, they probably would have to do a temporary retaining structure. And if the grade isn't significant, then they're able to transition the grade back. They can do it manually by transitioning a bank or a retaining structure, but we do not permit them to impact neighboring properties. So we'd be happy to follow up on that.
Yeah, thank you. And through the chair to staff, and also just like, is this a trend? Because I've seen it. I know I've visited sites where this was occurring. So I'd just like to know how widespread it's been detected from our staff. Thank you. And then the last item for staff on this one, we've received a number of comments related to light bylaw issues. If in the future there is more or new bylaws from the city related to light pollution or light impact on neighbors or light impact on wildlife or light impact on people who are driving on the highway fast, would we get like if we had a bylaw that involved light, would we get the update and like a regular response in this item? Is this where it would fit?
Through the chair to Councillor Wolf, subject to further discussions and really understanding the approach, the community bylaws provides bylaw enforcement services on a range of bylaws, and we tend to work with whichever the home department to figure that out, because we do provide services for bylaws for many other departments, and in some cases, initiating departments handle it themselves. So, I think we could say it would be likely, but it's hard to say without knowing the full context, especially in reference to, you said, cars on a highway. I'm not sure how that would necessarily land in community bylaws, but it's a possibility.
Great. Thank you very much. So I'll be following up on this issue with staff, and maybe this will come at a future meeting. Unless someone else on staff on committee is ready to bring it forward, I'm hoping in a future meeting we can discuss some of the options related to light bylaw when it regards to property use. So I think we'll have further discussion another time. So thank you, the chair.
Okay. Harold?
Yeah, I just have a sort of indirect question to this report and the last one about short-term rentals. Does anybody know what has happened to the short-term rentals? Are they becoming long-term, or are they just being vacant, or just becoming part of the household? Is there any indication that we're getting long-term rentals out of it?
Through the chair to Councillor Steves, it is a big range what we are finding, and absolutely we are finding some that are long-term. People are making different decisions, but I can't say that there's been a consistent theme. We've been following up on old files, and they're just not advertising and not hosting. So it's hard to. There's no specific trend. It's all of those things are happening.
I guess that leads to my next question then. As we get out of COVID-19, we do have the staff to catch up to them if they start reopening again, do we?
Yes, through the chair to Councillor Steves, we have council approval to hire 2 inspectors dedicated to short-term rentals, and we will proceed with that hiring as soon as travel restrictions lift.
Fantastic.
Okay, anything else? Okay, for the good of property use, motion moved, seconded. All those in favor, contrary, carried. Thank you. And the next item is community bylaws, parking enforcement. Susan Lloyd, are you pinch hitting this one?
Yes, nothing to add, and I'm happy to answer any
Nothing
questions.
to add. Okay, Michael?
Thank you through the chair to staff. My only question is, a number of months ago, I guess 2 months ago, I brought up a parking ticket that I received parking on Gilly Road out in Hamilton, right out in front of the house, which used to be kind of a grandfathered place to park, but then the city paved over the gravel edge, and now you can't park off the roadway anymore. Anyway, my question to staff is, I received a letter on March 4th related to the new Gilly Road parking regulations. My 2 questions, I guess, on this. How widespread would this type of information gone? Would it have been residents of Gilly Road only? And then the second part to that, is this a lead into that blue sign that you see around the city that says new parking regulations? Like, is this the precursor to another action, or is this the end of the process that the city takes?
Through the chair to Councillor Wolf, the letter was sent out to all residents of Gilly Road, and it was a joint letter through Transportation and Community Bylaws. And now the letter was stating in regards to the parking on the road violation, in regards to the Motor Vehicle Act, and referencing the traffic bylaw 5870, park on road.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Just the other follow-up on that then, through your chair, was, does this lead to the city putting up signs of no parking or new parking regulations, or does that not follow this?
Through the chair to Councillor Wolf, the letter states that the Transportation Department will not be putting up signage.
Okay.
New signage.
So this is a common practice.
Correct.
So, okay. Yeah, I was just curious because I see so many of those blue signs going up informing residents of changes. I was just trying to figure out where that fits into the the puzzle here. So thank you.
I'm happy to follow up with transportation. Perhaps there's two items going on with new signage that may not be related to the specific area where the incident happened with your vehicle.
Yeah, well, it wasn't mine because there's many other vehicles that have happened that I observed over Christmas. So that's great. Thank you if you can follow up on that. Thank you.
Okay, Jack?
Thank you. I have two questions on page CS23, some clarifications for numbers. On table 1, I noticed that the revenue from dog licenses and also animal control fines have increased dramatically. So my first question is, what is the reason for the huge increase? Are we sending out more people for enforcement or what?
Through the chair to Councillor the revenue for the parking revenue has increased due to monthly parking permits, and for ticketing, we have seen a slight increase in our ticketing, and the dog revenue has increased due to the beginning season of dog licensing in December. So we see a high revenue of people now paying their licensing fees even earlier, because they have up until February to pay the licensing fee early. Plus, there was some fines that were issued in January for off-leash and not having a dog license.
Yes, but if you look at the animal control fines, the budgeted revenue, right? It's 3 times, 4 times. So we are putting up more enforcement in this area.
Through the chair, the councillor, yes, we are.
Okay, good. And then I have another question about the discrepancies of numbers as I see it. For example, for parking revenue in table 1, the number is 169,000 as budgeted revenue for January 2021. But if you look at table 2, it's different. So it's 190,325. And the same also applies to animal control. The revenue projected and also the actual revenue collected in January, the two tables are not really the same.
Through the chair to Councillor if you take the revenue from the parking revenue, the 190,000 is the combined total of the 169,217, added up with the 5,000, the false alarms, the newspaper boxes, will equal the $190,000.
Okay, so that means it's more than just parking in table 2.
In table 2, it is the combined parking revenue. So all things through the chair to council is the combined revenue of all things associated to parking, which would be the contract revenue from Rusty's, which is $5,000, the false alarms, the newspaper box permit, and the parking revenue.
And how about for animal control?
Through the chair to councillor, it is the same. If you were to take the animal control fines, and the 54,000. Yes, if you take the dog licenses and you add the animal control fines, you will find that you have a revenue of $54,499.
Okay, good. So thank you for the clarification.
You're welcome.
Anything else on this report? Seeing none, a motion to receive for information, moved, seconded. All those in favor, contrary, carried. Thank you very much. All right, on to the next one, Fire Rescue Monthly Activity Report. Chief Wilkinson, I think he's, where are you here? Good.
Right.
You're
Thank
on.
you, Mr. Chair. I have nothing to add to my report. Welcome question.
Good report, thank you. Do I see Carol? You're,
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much to to the chair, through the chair to Chief Wilkinson. So as I read the report, it mentions on CS27 that there's been a decrease in medical response, but then it states in CS28 that Richmond Fire Department responded to a fatal gunshot wound. Is it that you only go to a certain level of emergency responses due to COVID?
Through the chair to Councillor Day, that's correct. Provincial health orders have reduced the amount of events that firefighters are going to right now. There is a lobby, I guess, going through UBCM to reinstate those events as soon as possible. I think, especially in light of some of the difficulties BC Ambulance is having right now.
Thank you, Guy. I'm very concerned. I've received a number of reports from paramedics out in the field, and when Vancouver, Burnaby, Port Coquitlam, and I have three ambulances on duty, that's a pretty horrible low number. And I understand some of that might be job action. And so if the firefighters are available to go to a call, I would hope that they would. And I understand, I was given an email that there was an incident in Vancouver where a retired doctor fell and broke a limb and waited 4.5 hours for the paramedics to take him to the hospital. Meanwhile, the fire department staff were there waiting with them, giving them Tylenol. So we certainly need to learn a lot more about this. So if you could enlighten us, that would be very much appreciated.
Well, through the chair, that isn't supposed to happen. If there are expected a wait time greater than 15 minutes, those calls are meant to go to the fire departments. And so I'm not sure what would have happened on that particular event, but it seems like perhaps there was a mistake made or just human error.
Yeah, in that incident, like I said, there was only 3 ambulances on duty for well over 1 million people. And my concern is that let's say the fire department in Vancouver had a transport vehicle that they could have transferred that poor gentleman to the hospital. He wouldn't have had to suffer for, over 4 hours.
Certainly, through the chair to Councillor Day, that would require a change to the legislation. Currently, it's a pretty significant hurdle to overcome right now. But, I mean, things change. It has to do with what our government is leading us to.
Well, please keep us informed, and thank you for these really great detailed reports.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Michael?
Great, thank you. Through the chair to Chief Wilkinson. Just have 2 question areas. The first one might be just maybe before this monthly activity report time frame, but I think many of us have probably heard concerns about the D&D and the fence going up and the clearing of the land and just that drastic change to a very common route that many people take through their daily life in Richmond. My question's more around the process. So maybe there's someone else from staff who can comment as well, but the Richmond Fire Rescue is a municipal entity, and I'm curious, was it recommendations directly from Fire Rescue that were mentioned in the Richmond newspaper, and I've communicated through staff to D&D a few questions already. But I'm just curious on the recommendations. It seems like in the limited information in the newspaper that the Richmond Fire said something, and so it happened. And I just want to make sure that the kind of the oversight on decisions that can be, and I think I'm fully supportive of the fence and not having a big fire again, and air pollution and all the great things that we're going to try and prevent here. But again, the issue is on oversight, and did the city overall support the information, or did we as a city also give separate recommendations that I'm not familiar with? So I'm not sure who on staff beyond Chief Wilkinson.
Well, I'm through the chair to Councillor Wolf. I'm happy to answer those questions. First and foremost, yes, we worked with the D&D groups and with Army Command to look at their property and make sure to safeguard it against future fires and to safeguard the armories against future fires. So there is a program called Firesmart that is a provincial program for this type of fire, a wildland type of fire. And we followed those guidelines in negotiations with the federal government. I think they weren't all that happy with $185,000 that they paid us, and so and we informed them it would be the same thing again should it occur, and they were very fortunate that the province didn't charge them for the water bombers. That would have been a massive charge. So it was a negotiation. The rules that we work along is through the BC Fire Code and the BC Fire Services Act. And so we comply exactly with those pieces. We work with Carly, we work with a number of the different agents within the city and come up with plans that work with our stakeholders. I only wish it would have happened quicker, but that was basically 2.5 years of negotiations to get a fence put up.
Okay, appreciate that. Well, I'm not sure if there's any other staff comment on that. If not, then my second question is related to bats, the flying mammals. So this is not in the report, I'm aware. But I'm bringing this up because I'm in communication with staff related to ways that the city can continue with its bat-friendly community designation. And there's one other city nearby that has this, and I'm bringing up the Fire Connection in a second. The other city is Peachland, and they actually work really closely with their fire department to do the annual cleaning of the major roosts that they have. And I know we don't have any defined roosts yet. The scientists have said there must be in Richmond. We haven't found them. But there's a big one in Dees Island outside of our jurisdiction. My question is, when I look at all the fire halls, they're quite tall and they all have somewhat of a south-facing side. I'm just looking at there's an expression of interest, perhaps, where I can see if there's a work that can be done where the fire department could use its equipment, the tall ladders, to put up a bat house in our bat-friendly community, and easy enough to have the new trainees go up and survey it the once a year that maintenance needs to happen. So is that a possibility to work on that partnership?
Well, through the chair to Councillor Wolf, yeah, we absolutely. We often work with our parks teams and with the different teams throughout the city. We're happy to help out at any project, really.
Perfect. Thank you very much. I'll follow up on that later. Thanks.
Okay, is there anything else? All right, seeing none, a motion to receive for information. So moved. All those in favor, contrary, carried. Thank you. Chief, do you have anything in the briefing? I says none, but just in case.
Nothing.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, you're off the hook. Thank you very much. RCMP monthly activity report, Chief Superintendent Will Ing. So we're okay. Your mic's live. Great report. Thank you. Where? Is Will on here?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Oh,
I'm
sorry,
here.
I'm looking on my screen. Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Anything to add or anything to highlight? Probably a number of things. Floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, January was a good month for us. The overall numbers were quite good. We saw that just a couple highlights. Our mental health calls for services were down 25%. Compared to last year, at this time, we were minus 41 events for mental health, so that's positive. The other worthy of note is property crime is down 13% in January compared to the year before, minus 78 events. What you have noticed, a couple things that went up slightly. Assaults went up by 45%, 11 events to 16 events. there are no trends or patterns. Out of the 16 events, we had 7 criminal charges and no risk to public safety. The other thing is arson went up from 2 to 7 events. We currently have an arson task force, and we're currently working on a number of individuals right now as we speak. And that's pretty much it.
Okay, I've got some questions. Alexa, got you all. Alexa, you're on.
Thank you, through the chair. Question to Chief Superintendent. Congratulations again. On
Thank you.
page 39, it talks about the COVID statistics, and it talks about calls for incidents were related to reports of social gatherings and failure to wear a mask. Now, if someone's calling to complain about that, they should be calling the non-emergency number or bylaws, or how should they be getting in touch with you for that?
Thank you, Councillor Liu. They can call the non-emergency number. It is answered by our call takers during the daytime, but I believe that they can call bylaws as well, and bylaws to support us that way as well. And they act as an intermediary for those types of calls.
Okay. So while these are very important, they're not a 911 call, to be clear.
Yes.
They can be. They can be a 911 call. We've had a number of incidences where, in the month of February, we've had a number of illegal drinking establishment calls. Sometimes we've discovered them. Sometimes they were called in, and we do go there and respond to those calls. So, Cecilia might have something more to add to that. But.
Anything to add on that?
Through the chair to Councillor Liu, I was only mentioning that the bylaw number, we also have the watch commands number on hand. So if it is something that our bylaw officers take in, we also send it to them so there's no time gap. So there's a good coordination between the two.
Thank you.
Okay, anything else? You're good? Okay, thank you, Michael. Got you, Carol. Got you, Jack. Yes. Yeah.
Thank you. Through the chair, Chief Superintendent, and the only question I had is related to community police station programs, or not necessarily the ones in the report, but just in general. So on the city website, it talks about the main detachment, the new upcoming city center CPO, the Steveston CPO, and the South Arm temporarily closed CPO. My question is, I've received a lot of comments related to Hamilton area and the potential community police office coming into this neighborhood. And I know there's some discussion in closed, probably because it relates to other ownership of property and other designs that we're waiting for. So just share what you can in open. I don't need to go into closed. But the question is, what type of community police office will it be? If you can answer that. I have asked staff, and they've said it's the storefront. But can we compare it? Are you able to compare it to one of the existing 4 or 3 plus the one that's going to open, or is it different? And is that expected to meet your needs, the storefront type?
Thank you. Through the chair to Councillor Wolf. So there are, of course, 2 types of offices for police. One is, one that supports operations, and one is more of a storefront, which is more of a community police storefront. So what we did with respect to city center is we combined the 2. We combined a storefront with a operational district office, and that enables our police officers. It has enhanced security features, which enables our officers to deploy directly out of there. And it also provides security for things such as police exhibits, police computers, secure areas for storage of police equipment, and also a secure area to park of police cars. And that enables us to, of course, deploy directly out of there. And what we have been able to do is deploy multiple units out of city center, and that has enhanced our service delivery to the community. has reduced response times, and has provided greater visibility in city center, which has been well received. And the vision for Hamilton is that it's a growing community, and it is far away. And so, with respect to a deployment strategy, it would be great to have that potential or that ability to deploy out of Hamilton. And there's been talk in the past of some of our traffic units may be able to deploy out of Hamilton. But again, it's infrastructure. It is something that needs to be discussed as to, with increased security features comes increased costs. And so that's something that, definitely needs to be discussed as to whether it's, whether it's something that we can, fund or not. But with some features for security, we could very well deploy a few officers out of there.
Perfect. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Okay, Carol?
Thank you very much to the chair. Great report as always. And, Carol, the broken record has to ask one more time about our auxiliary police officers. Once again, the numbers are low, and we know a big part of that is COVID. But behind the scenes, have there been any further discussions with Ottawa about increasing the capabilities of the auxiliary force?
Yes, through the chair to Councillor Day. Thank you. We are currently waiting for the provincial government to provide an answer on what's called Tier 3 and the rollout of Tier 3, which is enabling our auxiliary officers to accompany regular officers to patrol and to do those functions. So that's still with the provincial government. And there's been also talk of having our own provincial auxiliary program. And but that's currently up in the air. But that just provides the province of BC more control over the auxiliary program for RCMP. But currently, we're still waiting for an answer.
Just a follow-up question, please, to the chair. So before we were waiting for Ottawa, now we're waiting for the province. Has the infrastructure changed?
Sure. I'll let Cecilia maybe take this one.
Yeah, through the chair to Councillor Day, Ottawa has, because of events that happened back east, if you remember, there was auxiliary officers that were gunned down, so they were not wanting to give auxiliary officer the same level of work that previously we were able to. British Columbia, through efforts by multiple councils and through UBCM, have been lobbying to have our own provincial auxiliary officer, so separate program altogether. So that is what is being debated now, and we are waiting for the outcome of that. And so, we've been following up, and as soon as we have any actual information, we will certainly make sure that Council is aware, and we continue working with UBCM on the effort.
Well, I'm really pleased to see that there is work being done behind the scenes. It's such a valuable program. Thank you to both of you.
Thank you.
Okay, you done, Carol? Jack?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a question about the attachment. Again, thanks to the police force in keeping us safe. And I really like the attachment on the crime prevention newsletter. I think it's a very informative and very helpful. I really like it. Now, I have three questions about this. One is, how widely circulated is this newsletter? And second, is it being translated into other languages? And thirdly, I would like to suggest that perhaps sometime in the future, there could be another topic on personal safety. People walking in the dark after hours, things like that. So how can people keep themselves safe? So those are my two questions regarding the crime prevention newsletter.
Yes, through the chair to Councillor Al. Thank you for your question. And Councillor Day actually made a suggestion, probably about over a year ago, to circulate these crime prevention newsletters to our local community centers. And so we've been doing that since that suggestion was made. And also, of course, before our community police stations shut down, we were circulating them there as well. But yeah, at all our community centers, this crime prevention newsletter is being sent out. In addition to that, is to all our block watch and block captains as well, so they receive a copy of this. With respect to the language, no, it's not. I don't believe it's currently being translated, but that's certainly something we can look into and doing in the future. And with respect to the topics of strangers and that sort of thing, walking by yourself, personal safety. That's certainly a topic that would be great to cover in a future newsletter. So I can definitely make mention to that to our crime prevention unit. Yeah.
And I also want to add that for topics such as cyberbullying, I think perhaps this can be sent to schools, and the students would be good for them to have this information, because I think it happens to many youth. So I think it may not be everything to be sent to schools, but topics such as cyberbullying, I think, might be a good topic.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Al. Through the chair, cyberbullying is something that we cover off in our schools, and that I feel that that's very important for officers to be engaged with our schools, because there is a gap there, and we need to provide education in that area to ensure that our kids feel safe with, and also to alert the authorities if they are being, witnessing cyberbullying or anything, on social media that they need to alert the police about. Yeah.
Thank you.
Through the chair, if I could add one item, I'm doing a plug for the RCMP. Their RCMP app also have the newsletter on it. So if councils can use your vast outreach in your social media and encourage people to sign on to the app, a lot of the information, they don't have to wait to pick it up hard copy.
Thank you for that. Have I got everybody else? Okay. It would also be nice, possibly, if we have the newsletter, to put one in each of the councillors' box, so that they have the information. That's all of councillors. Just back to you, Will, if I may, and a comment. The topics that you talk about in terms of personal safety and what have you were in the schools. Are not many of the topics covered in the DARE program, and aren't the liaison police officers within the school a valuable source for people to get that kind of information?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Absolutely. Our officers, Bal Condola does a fantastic job with covering everything from being a good citizen to doing the right thing with our kids. And she works tirelessly every week. I really admire her. Yep. But she gets out there and ensures that every class is covered in the city. And yes, she does cover off a number of these topics. And but we make a point to also cover off some of these topics as well with cyberbullying. I think it's extremely important. And we actually have a cybercrime unit. An officer, Constable Jen Freeman, who used to be on our youth section. She's also a subject matter expert when it comes to cybercrime. And she also provides materials for us to educate our youth on the dangers of cyberspace and social media.
And also, a quick question on the liaison police officers, because I started the liaison program with Unit 4 of Oak Ridge at McGee Secondary way back when, and believe it or not, it was Chris Offer, who was a constable at the time. For those that know him, and rose up to inspector with the Vancouver Police Department. They're talking about cutting out the liaison police officers. Do we have enough officers to go around to each of the secondary schools? Very important, but in particular the elementary schools as well?
Yes, Mr. Chair, we do. In fact, we had our officers just reported this morning on attending all the elementary schools and our secondary schools. Again, that's part of our capacity to ensure that we have enough officers in the youth program to cover off all the schools. And currently we do. Currently, with our current deployment strategy, we have sufficient officers to cover off all our schools, and also to complete all our programs, including the DARE program as well. In fact, 35 elementary schools this week covered off, and 17 secondary schools.
Yeah, I think
in Richmond.
As a committee and as a council in the city, we should never underestimate the influence the officers can have in the schools and with a lot of vulnerable kids. And sometimes that's their only haven. And I think it's very, very important, and second to none. I just wanted to come back on something that was brought up earlier, and that with the provincial auxiliary program. I guess I get impatient when I sit on ECOM and I see what ECOM is doing and working with the province, and hopefully, by golly, on various things. And I'm wondering if it's not time to write another letter of support to the province, outlining the uniqueness of our auxiliary program, because I think I may be wrong, but our auxiliary program is probably second to none, and probably more active than many, many others within the province. I'm not belittling anybody, because I believe they're important, but sometimes certain departments across the water need a gentle reminder of all the good things that are happening out in the communities. And when we have an exemplary program, they also have an exemplary program, and they don't realize it sometimes. And same with the Fed, that they can piggyback. So I think it was you, Carol. I think it's time that we maybe write another letter of support. And yes, we're going to work with UBCM, et cetera, but it's going to take time to do it, and it's going to go around the bureaucratic circle as opposed to go to the direct route and under your command, and to see that, hopefully we can continue along the line. I think we probably put more resources into it, and we also value it more than probably some other communities. And I find that different with the board of directors at ECOM, the different emphasis that each director plays within their community on community safety. And it varies immensely, to be quite frank with you. And I just share that with you as a public, and I've said that in public at ECOM. So I'm just wondering, I take guidance from staff, I take guidance from you. Well, is it worth our while to have another letter from the mayor and, saying, let's get this thing together and let's make some decisions, or let's put out some parameters anyhow that we can go ahead and work.
Yeah, through the chair, the council has in the past written very supportive letter on the program. It certainly doesn't hurt at any point in time for the senior levels of politicians to hear directly from the council. So staff can draft up a letter for signature for the mayor.
Well, for the record, I would move that we ask staff to draft up a letter outlining our program, outlining the needs of our program, and showing the successes as a result of our program, and we want to continue those successes down the road. So I would so move that. I see seconder. Thank you, Carol. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Contrary, carried. Okay, thank you very much. Now, great report. Thank you very much for the good work, and in all our community safety people through management and others. I think we need. It's very difficult times, and we pass on our heartfelt thanks to all the people that are on the front line for all of us. So I hope through you, Will, and Chief Wilkinson, and even our bylaw officers, etc. A huge thank you. Okay. Anything else for
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
from managers? Hello.
There are several managers report. Okay. There will be several managers report.
Okay. Is there anything else then on Will's? Okay, moved and seconded. All those in favor, contrary, carried with thanks. Anything in the briefing? Just it's on there, but it says no events, but we're okay? Well, okay, we're okay. All right, over to you, Cecilia. Managers reports.
So through the chair, a couple of items. I think one item is you would have received a memo from the Deputy Chief Wishlove that we are transferring from an old antiquated emergency notification system to a new system that would work with My Richmond. So for any public members and councilors that were signed on to the previous one, you'll be getting a message on your phone to migrate over. So I would highly encourage you to do so. And we're hoping with the much larger reach of My Richmond as the major portal to the city, we will be able to drastically increase our current 8,000 members that are signed on to the emergency notification system. So more to come, and it's a good thing, and it's a long time coming. And Mr. Corrado, Mark Corrado, will have follow up with a couple of items. So I'll hand it over to Mark.
Okay. Mark, you're on.
Yes, Mr. Chair, just a quick update on the traffic camera project. Things are progressing nicely. We are looking at a go-live date in the beginning of Q2 of this year. There's been significant progress in terms of acquiring, procuring, and installing the majority of the equipment. We are just in the stage of going through software and systems testing in its entirety. There has been a recent hire of a technologist position, a staff member, who is also assisting in setting up standard operating procedures. And we are also progressing on our communications plan. We have met the parameters of the privacy commissioner in terms of signage in and around the city that's being put up. It's being temporarily covered, and closer toward the actual go-live date, those signs will be revealed. In addition, this project includes an extensive online system through My Richmond, which the public can request their footage and pay for it. So it's an innovative system, and we hope that it's going to make it a lot more efficient.
Okay. Anything else? Any other questions? Anything else for the good of community safety? Seeing none, a motion to adjourn. Everybody's smiling. So moved, thank you. Moved seconded, all those in favor, contrary carry. We are now adjourned.